He slid the envelope onto the hospital bed before she could even sit upright. The twins were still crying, their tiny fists trembling. When he said the words that shattered the room, "I'm done," nurses froze. Machines beeped. Her heart seemed to stop. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, yet the man she had loved for 6 years wouldn't even look at their children. She stared at the envelope, hands weak, body aching, stitches burning. "What is this?" she whispered, already knowing. He adjusted his cufflinks like this was a business meeting. "Divorce papers. Signed. Prepared. Ready." He said the babies had ruined everything. Said people were laughing at him. Said she had become a burden the moment she got pregnant. Each sentence landed like a slap, harder than the last. She asked him to hold the twins. Just once. He refused. Stepped back as if they were contaminated. The room filled with the sound of newborn cries and a woman trying not to scream. He accused her of cheating, of trapping him, of trying to secure his future with children he claimed might not even be his. She searched his face for a crack, a hint of doubt, but found only cold certainty. Outside the room, his phone buzzed. He smiled for the first time that day and turned away to answer it. She realized then that he had already moved on. While she bled and shook and stitched herself together, he had chosen a new life. When he returned, he placed a pen beside the papers and told her to sign quickly. Visiting hours were almost over. Tears slid into her ears as she turned her head on the pillow. She thought of the nights she stayed awake, rubbing her belly alone. The promises he made when the babies kicked for the first time. The future he painted so vividly she believed it was real. All of it dissolved into that thin stack of paper. When she refused to sign, his voice hardened. He told her she'd leave the hospital alone. No house, no car, no support. He reminded her she had no parents, no inheritance, no safety net. Just 2 babies and a broken body. The nurses watched helplessly as he walked out, shoes clicking with finality. Minutes later, when silence finally settled, a nurse leaned close and spoke carefully. "Ma'am," she said, glancing toward the door, "there's a man downstairs asking for you. He says he's been searching for you for years." Her breath caught. Outside, somewhere beyond the sterile walls, something was shifting. She didn't know it yet, but the moment he left her was the moment his downfall quietly began. She held the twins closer, feeling their warmth anchor her to the moment. Fear pressed in, but beneath it stirred something unfamiliar, stubborn, alive. Whoever that man was, he had arrived too late for rescue, yet perfectly timed for change. As the elevator doors closed somewhere below, fate began rearranging pieces neither she nor her husband could yet see, and none of them would ever fall back into place. The man waited beside the elevator, tall, composed, dressed in a black suit that did not belong in a public hospital. When she was wheeled toward him, exhausted and pale, he straightened and bowed slightly, as if greeting royalty. "Mrs. Amara Okoye," he said softly. Her heart jolted. That name had not crossed her lips in decades. "I think you have the wrong person," she replied, tightening her grip on the twins. Her voice shook. The man smiled gently and produced a leather folder. "I assure you I do not." He explained he was a legal executor, sent after the death of her maternal grandfather. A man of unimaginable wealth. A man who had searched endlessly for his lost granddaughter. She laughed weakly, pain slicing through her chest. "I don't have a grandfather," she said. "I grew up in foster homes." He nodded, as if he had expected resistance. He told her about a disappearance, a sealed adoption, a woman who died protecting a secret. Each detail pierced too accurately to be coincidence. As they spoke, her ex-husband stood across the lobby pretending not to listen, phone angled uselessly in his hand. When the executor mentioned DNA confirmation and inheritance protocols, his head snapped up. His eyes narrowed. He stepped closer, curiosity outweighing pride. She saw it instantly. The same hunger that had destroyed her marriage. The executor lowered his voice. "Your grandfather left no surviving children. Only you." He paused, then added, "The estate is valued in excess of $10 billion. The words landed quietly, yet the air around them shifted. She felt dizzy, not from shock alone, but from timing so cruel it felt intentional. Her ex laughed aloud. "This is a joke," he said. "She's broke. Always has been." The executor turned unbothered and asked for privacy. Security appeared almost immediately. Her ex was escorted away, still shouting, still mocking, still unaware of how fragile his position truly was. She was moved into a private room that night. Blood was drawn. Documents were signed. Silence wrapped around her like a held breath. When the executor left, he promised answers soon and protection immediately. She stared at the ceiling long after the twins slept. Across town, her ex paced his apartment, replaying every word he'd overheard. 10 billion. Executor. DNA. The numbers haunted him. He told himself it meant nothing. Yet dread crept in, cold and sharp. Back in the hospital, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. One message appeared. "We found you, and others may try to do the same." She did not reply. Instead, she turned the phone face down and looked at her sleeping children. For the first time since the delivery room, fear was joined by resolve. If powerful people were watching, she would learn faster. If danger followed wealth, she would walk carefully. Somewhere beyond the hospital walls, a man who had discarded her was already calculating his return. He did not yet understand the rules had changed. And this game would not reward late regret. Everything depended on what she chose next, and who would survive the truth ahead alone. Blood vials lined the stainless tray as nurses moved quietly around her bed. She watched the needle enter her arm without flinching, because pain had already rewritten her limits. Somewhere in the building, a machine hummed, counting seconds. The executor stood nearby, calm, precise, explaining procedures, timelines, confidentiality, and protection, while the twins slept, unaware that fate was being measured in milliliters that morning alone. Hours later, the DNA specialist returned with a sealed envelope and eyes that avoided hers. "Results rarely came this fast," he said, "unless certainty already existed." Her breath caught as the executor opened the file. Names, dates, genetic markers aligned perfectly. There was no ambiguity. She was the granddaughter. She was the heir. And nothing could reverse it now, despite every betrayal imaginable endured before. Across town, he sat in his car outside the hospital, knuckles white against the steering wheel. He told himself he was waiting for closure, yet his ears strained for whispers. When a nurse mentioned DNA confirmation to another staff member, his stomach dropped. Lies he'd rehearsed collapsed instantly. If the children were his, then the divorce was greed, not pride, and he knew it fully. That evening, he confronted her by phone, voice suddenly gentle, apologetic, rehearsed. He spoke of stress, confusion, misunderstanding. She listened silently, eyes fixed on the twins. When he suggested reconciliation, she felt nothing but clarity. She told him the DNA confirmed everything. The line went quiet. In that silence, power shifted hands permanently, without mercy, warning, apology, hesitation, remorse, or escape for him anymore ever. Legal teams arrived before sunrise. Contracts replaced fear. Security replaced uncertainty. She learned her grandfather had monitored her life from afar, blocked by enemies and courts. Her poverty was engineered. Her abandonment strategic. Rage burned quietly beneath her composure. This was not luck. This was restoration delayed. Somewhere, her ex refreshed his messages, waiting for forgiveness that would never come or be granted again ever. She signed her first document as beneficiary without smiling. The executor warned her that wealth attracted predators, especially familiar ones. She nodded, already understanding. Love had been her first lesson. Betrayal, the second. As dawn light touched the windows, she whispered a promise to her children. No one would ever discard them again, not even blood relatives, husbands, or fathers pretending loyalty existed when convenient. He watched the sun rise from his apartment balcony, phone silent, confidence eroding. For the first time, fear outweighed arrogance. If she truly held that fortune, then every insult, Every threat, every abandonment had been recorded by fate. He realized too late that money changed people less than power revealed them. And she had finally been revealed to the world, starting with him alone tonight. In a guarded room, she rocked the twins, paperwork stacked beside her. $10 billion waited, but so did enemies, regrets, and consequences. She was no longer running. She was preparing. Outside, storms gathered quietly. Inside, resolve hardened. The man who left her believed this story had ended. He was wrong. It had only just begun with vengeance, memory, justice, legacy, twins, silence, and time. Izora stepped into the underground garage at dawn, twins secured against her chest, as armored doors slid shut behind them. Engines idled. Men with earpieces scanned shadows. Yesterday, she had been abandoned. Today, the world rearranged itself around her silence. The executor explained routes, safe houses, interim accounts, and why secrecy mattered more than celebration. Cameras flashed outside, rumors already leaking. She caught her reflection in tinted glass and barely recognized the woman staring back. Not fragile, not pleading, just alert. When the convoy moved, she felt the city recede like a life she no longer owed. Above ground, her former apartment still held her clothes. Below ground, she carried something heavier than luggage. Proof, children, and a future that would punish memory. Relentlessly, fate tightened its grip without mercy. He watched the convoy from across the street, hidden behind tinted glass, pulse hammering. Her posture was different. Straighter. Untouchable. Something sour twisted inside him. He told himself he deserved answers, not blame. When he followed, security intervened before he reached the ramp. A polite warning, firm hands, eyes that assessed him as a risk. Humiliation burned hotter than fear. Back in his car, he replayed old arguments, twisting them into excuses. He had doubted her, yes, but stress explained cruelty. Money complicated everything. If she truly controlled that fortune, then apology became strategy. He dialed her number again, already scripting tears. Regret arrived late, noisy, and useless, dragging memories he once mocked. Outside, morning traffic roared, indifferent to his panic. He sensed control slipping permanently away from him alone. She arrived at a temporary residence overlooking the river, sterile yet secure. Lawyers waited, documents aligned like weapons. They spoke of trusts, boards, and interim authority, but her focus narrowed to one instruction: disappear publicly. Her name would change. Her records would seal. The woman he divorced would become history. She signed the request without hesitation, pen steady. In the bathroom mirror, she practiced stillness, burying grief beneath discipline. Memories surfaced anyway. His laughter, his threats, the hospital bed. She let them pass. This was not erasure. It was preparation. Outside, the river kept moving, reminding her that survival required motion. Each signature felt like armor locking into place. The twins slept through the transformation. Night would test her resolve soon enough. Enemies always sense silence before storms begin break. Far away, he stood in the apartment she once cleaned, realizing absence echoed louder than shouting. Her number no longer connected. Friends avoided him. Screens filled with speculation. He imagined her weak, frightened, grateful. Reality contradicted everything. Power had not softened her. It sharpened her. He poured a drink he could not taste and stared at the divorce copy on his table. Ink dried quickly. Consequences did not. Somewhere, she was becoming someone unreachable. He promised himself he would fix this. Unaware fixes belonged to the past. As night fell, a single thought haunted him. If she changed her name, would he even know who to chase? Fear crawled in, quiet, corrosive, and deserved. The city offered no answers, only reflections. He slept poorly, dreaming of locked doors forever now. Morning headlines broke before he finished his coffee. A quiet acquisition. An anonymous holding company. The firm he worked for, no, the firm he depended on, had changed ownership overnight. He skimmed the article, pulse rising, until a single line froze him. Interim chair to be announced today. He told himself it was coincidence. Money moved fast. So did rumors. Still, his hands shook. Across the river, she stood behind one-way glass in a boardroom she did not yet officially own. Advisors spoke, screens glowed, numbers stacked into certainty. She listened, saying little, until they reached his department. "Retain staff," she said evenly. "Restructure leadership. No anger. No gloating. Precision only." She signed the directive that placed him under review. Power, she learned, worked best when quiet. By noon, his manager summoned him. Words like realignment and temporary assignment floated, thin as excuses. His title vanished. His office reassigned. He was told to report to facilities until further notice. Laughter rippled nearby. He swallowed humiliation and nodded, cheeks burning. In the elevator mirror, he barely recognized himself. The building felt hostile, suddenly unfamiliar, like a city after exile. She watched the internal camera feed without expression. Not satisfaction, confirmation. Revenge was not the goal. Balance was. For years, he had reduced her worth to convenience. Today, she reduced his access to comfort. Advisors asked if she wanted him terminated. She shook her head. "No," she said. "Let him stay." Mercy, measured, could bruise deeper than dismissal. He sent messages he never would have written before. Apologies, explanations, promises. He referenced memories, inside jokes, the twins. He avoided the word money, though it screamed between every line. When no reply came, he tried again. Silence answered. He spent the afternoon replacing light fixtures under supervision, sweating through borrowed gloves. Each step echoed with disbelief. That evening, she visited the nursery and held her children, inhaling their calm. She remembered scrubbing floors while pregnant, how he complained about the smell of detergent. She remembered signing papers on a hospital bed. She set the past down gently, like a blade she no longer needed to swing wildly. Control was enough. At closing time, an all-staff email arrived. New ownership welcomed employees and announced performance reviews across divisions. He read it twice, searching for reassurance, finding none. A colleague whispered condolences. Another avoided his eyes. He packed his bags slowly, aware that everyone was watching now. She ended the day approving one last motion. Company scholarships named for the twins, effective immediately. Not charity, legacy. As she turned off the lights, her phone buzzed once. An unknown number. She ignored it. Outside, the city pulsed, unaware of the quiet recalibration underway. He walked home under streetlights, rehearsing a confrontation he would not get. Somewhere above him, windows glowed with decisions he could no longer influence. He understood then that power had changed hands without a sound. And worse, she was not finished. He saw the twins for the first time through glass, small and perfect, cradled in a nurse's arms at the pediatric wing. His chest tightened in a way that surprised him. They were real. They were his. The lie he had hidden behind collapsed completely. He stood frozen, palms pressed to the window, while people passed without noticing the man unraveling quietly in the hallway. The custody filing went out that afternoon. His lawyer warned him it would look bad. Sudden interest after abandonment, but desperation overruled caution. He told himself fathers made mistakes and corrected them. He told himself courts favored reconciliation. Mostly, he told himself money changed outcomes. What he did not admit was fear. Fear of being erased from their lives entirely. She read the filing without blinking. The twins slept beside her, breaths synchronized. Unaware, they were now leverage in a man's redemption fantasy. Her lawyers advised caution, compromise, appearances. She listened, then requested one thing only. The truth entered into record. Every message, every accusation, every threat. No edits. No mercy. If he wanted access, he would walk through his own words first. Court moved quickly when wealth hovered nearby. He arrived rehearsed, suit pressed, humility practiced. Cameras waited outside. Inside, the judge asked questions he could not dodge. Why the divorce immediately after birth? Why the accusations without proof? Why no visit, no support, no concern until rumors of inheritance surfaced? Each answer thinned under scrutiny. Then the DNA results were entered. Confirmed paternity. Time-stamped weeks before the divorce. The room shifted. The judge looked at him longer this time. Not angry. Assessing. He felt exposed, stripped of narrative. Across the aisle, she met his eyes without heat. That hurt more than hatred ever could. He tried to speak, to explain stress, pressure, mistakes. His voice cracked on the word sorry. It landed flat. Apologies sounded different when translated into legal record. The judge ordered supervised visitation pending evaluation. Limited. Conditional. He nodded too quickly, relief mingling with shame. It was something. Not forgiveness, but proximity. Outside, reporters shouted questions. He lowered his head. She exited another door, unseen, protected. In the car, she finally exhaled. Victory felt hollow, but safety felt real. She would not weaponize the twins, yet she would not offer them to instability either. Love required consistency. He had proven capable of none. That night, he stared at a framed ultrasound he had once hidden in a drawer. He remembered laughing it off, calling it a trap. Now it accused him silently. Across the city, she rocked the twins, whispering promises about boundaries and truth. She would not poison them against him. She would simply let time speak. The judge's order sat between them like a line drawn in stone. He had access, not absolution. She had control, not closure. The twins slept on, unaware that their existence had already taught a lesson neither parent could escape. Some doors reopened slowly. Others never do. The courtroom felt smaller than before, air heavy with whispers and judgment. This time, there were no cameras, no theatrics. Just facts. The judge adjusted her glasses and began reading aloud from printed exhibits. His texts, his emails, his voice notes. Each sentence peeled back another layer of the man he pretended to be. Laughter surfaced at the wrong moments, cruel jokes about pregnancy. Doubts sharpened into accusations. The room absorbed every word in stunned silence. He sat rigid, hands clenched, as his own messages condemned him. When the judge quoted the line about signing papers before she gets ideas, his shoulders sagged. He had forgotten how permanent words were, how easily truth waited to be replayed. He glanced at her, hoping for mercy in her eyes. There was none, only patience. Her lawyer rose calmly, requesting no additional penalties, no punitive damages, no extended testimony. Just the record. The judge nodded, surprised. "You're not seeking child support?" she asked. A murmur rippled. She stood then, voice steady. "No, Your Honor." The words echoed. He looked up sharply. Relief flashed, then confusion, then something close to fear. The judge studied her. "May I ask why?" She paused, choosing honesty over strategy. "Because support implies reliance," she said. "And my children will never learn they depend on someone who chose to abandon them." The judge exhaled slowly, understanding dawning. He shrank into his chair. Mercy had arrived wearing sharper edges than punishment. The ruling followed swiftly. Supervised visitation remained. No unscheduled contact. No public statements. Any violation would revoke access entirely. The gavel fell once, decisive. It sounded like an ending. It wasn't. Outside, he tried to catch her before security intervened. "Thank you," he blurted, "for not destroying me." She stopped, turned, and spoke quietly. "I didn't spare you," she said. "I removed myself." Then she walked away, heels measured, posture unbreakable. He stood alone, gratitude souring into something heavier. If she had demanded money, he could have paid. If she had screamed, he could have defended himself. But indifference left no foothold. He felt smaller than he ever had. That night, she returned home and sat by the twins' cribs, watching their chests rise and fall. Friends called her strong. Headlines hinted at restraint. None of it captured the ache. Letting go required more courage than retaliation. She allowed herself one tear, then wiped away. Tomorrow demanded clarity. He went back to his apartment and stared at his phone, tempted to break the order. He didn't. Fear held him back. Respect never had. He realized then that redemption was not a conversation. It was a lifetime of consistency he had not yet earned. Somewhere between mercy and consequence, a line had been drawn. He had crossed it long ago. She had stepped back just in time. The lesson settled slowly, painfully. Karma didn't need her help. It had already taken notes, and it was far from finished. The invitation arrived embossed and understated, delivered by courier to his door. No return name, no explanation, just a date, a time, and a venue that pulsed with prestige. His pulse followed. He read it twice, then smiled, convinced this was reconciliation wrapped in elegance. People didn't invite enemies. They invited futures. He chose a suit and practiced apologies alone before the mirror, hopeful tonight. He arrived early, heart racing, scanning faces for hers. The hall glittered with wealth and whispers, crystal lights, reflecting ambition. Familiar executives nodded, surprised to see him included. He mistook curiosity for respect. When music softened, anticipation swelled. This had to mean forgiveness. Only she could summon this crowd. Only she could still decide his fate. He believed desperately tonight, standing beneath chandeliers, waiting, alone. Backstage, she breathed once and stepped forward. Applause rose, controlled and curious. She wore authority like tailored fabric, calm and unyielding. He barely recognized her. She spoke of vision, governance, transparency. No names. No bitterness. Then she announced her role as CEO, effective immediately. The room leaned in. He felt the floor tilt beneath him as murmurs spread. Smiles froze, cameras lifted, breath held tight. Gasps rippled. Phones rose. He searched for escape and found none. She continued, unveiling initiatives, acquisitions, scholarships bearing the twins' names. Each word closed a door. He understood then why he was invited, not to return, but to witness. Not to be forgiven, but to be remembered. Applause thundered. He clapped last, hands numb, face burning amid cheers, lights, whispers, judgment, stares, silence, echoes, finality. Afterward, he waited, convinced she would come. Security redirected him politely. Her assistant delivered a single envelope. Inside, a program and a note. Thank you for attending. Nothing else. No signature. No hope. The cruelty lay in restraint. She had mastered distance. Around him, guests celebrated a future he no longer belonged to, smiling past him with glasses raised, laughter, deals, promises, power sealed tonight. She returned home late, heels off, armor set aside. The twins slept, unaware of stages and spotlights. She watched them and felt the tremor pass. Public triumph meant nothing without private peace. She had not destroyed him. She had outgrown him. Tomorrow would bring backlash. Tonight, she allowed quiet to win, knowing silence could be louder than applause after storms, before reckonings, ahead, waiting unseen. He rode home, alone, invitation folded like a verdict. Messages buzzed with gossip and pity. He deleted them all. In his mirror, regret looked older than yesterday. He realized the cost was not money or status, but proximity to meaning. She had stepped into legacy. He stood outside it, knocking too late, unheard by doors, locked, polished, guarded, bright, forever, now undeniably, painfully, publicly alone. The night closed with unanswered questions. Would he accept the lesson, or chase illusions? Would power protect her, or invite sharper tests? She turned off the lights and chose rest. He stared at the ceiling and chose obsession. Somewhere between them, consequences gathered momentum. The invitation had done its work. Witnessing was punishment enough, and the future waited, unsympathetic, relentless, patient, watchful, closing in slowly. The stage lights dimmed as she stepped forward again. Twins balanced confidently on her hips. Silence fell fast. She spoke about resilience, about building futures, without naming pain. The audience leaned closer, sensing confession without confession. He sat near the back, shrinking, knowing every sentence pointed inward. She told a story of abandonment framed as choice, of motherhood forged in solitude, of rebuilding without bitterness. She never said his name. She never needed to. Faces turned toward him anyway, curiosity sharpening into recognition. Each pause stretched like judgment. Then she announced the foundation: education, healthcare, protection for women and children abandoned at their most vulnerable moments. The twins' names glowed behind her. Applause erupted, thunderous, sustained. He felt it batter him from all sides. Pride curdled into something bitter. He clapped once, then stopped, hands trembling. Questions followed. Reporters pressed about inspiration. She smiled and answered calmly. "Some lessons are expensive," she said, "but they pay dividends when shared." Laughter rippled. He swallowed. He understood then. She was not hiding the past. She was transcending it publicly. After the event, donors lined up. Deals were whispered. Futures secured. He stood frozen, forgotten by movers of the room. When he tried to speak, conversations flowed around him like water around stone. He had become irrelevant in a single evening. Later at home, she removed makeup and sat by the window, exhaustion settling. Victory felt quieter than expected. She thought of the hospital bed, the papers, the fear. She let the memory pass without gripping it. Growth required release. Across town, he scrolled through headlines dissecting her speech. Commentators praised restraint. Memes mocked a mystery ex. He recognized himself in caricature and closed the app. Shame burned hotter than anger now. He drafted an email apology and deleted it. He considered calling and didn't. The distance she created was deliberate, protective. He sensed that crossing it would cost him what little dignity remained. She tucked the twins in and kissed their foreheads. "Your story belongs to you," she whispered. "Not his. Not hers. Theirs." Outside, the city hummed, indifferent yet witness. The announcement traveled overnight, reaching places she had never been. Support poured in. So did scrutiny. She welcomed both. Legacy demanded accountability. He lay awake, replaying applause meant for her alone. The realization settled. Regret arrives when leverage is gone. He had mistaken forgiveness for entitlement. Now he understood the difference. Morning would bring new challenges. Enemies would test her resolve. Courts, boards, vultures. She would face them standing. He would face himself sitting. Between them stretched a gulf shaped by choices. The foundation launched. The past closed. Karma advanced without hurry. Some watched in awe. Some in envy. One in ruin. The twins slept, dreaming of nothing yet, while the world rearranged itself around their names. Tomorrow would test patience and steel. She prepared, quietly, deliberately. He rehearsed excuses no one asked for. Time watched them both, impartial, exacting. Choices echo longer than apologies. Power remembers everything. Fate keeps receipts. Consequences collect interest. The story continued, unfinished, unsatisfied, relentless. Questions lingered. Who would endure? Who would learn? Who would return? The notification arrived at dawn. Account access restricted pending review. He refreshed, frowned, tried another app. Same message. His stomach tightened. By noon, calls went unanswered. Cards declined at lunch. He laughed it off in public, then hurried home, heart racing, sweat cold. Money, he learned, disappeared faster than dignity. The bank email followed, polite and final. Irregularities flagged. Credit lines frozen. Assets reevaluated. He read it twice, then a third time, breath shallow. The lifestyle he wore like armor cracked instantly. Friends texted less. Silence grew teeth. He poured coffee he couldn't taste and stared at a balance that no longer obeyed him. Across the city, she reviewed reports without emotion. Advisors warned her not to intervene. She agreed. This was not vengeance, it was gravity. Companies audited. Shells collapsed. Guarantees evaporated. Consequences aligned. She approved nothing, denied nothing. She simply stepped aside and let structures do what they were designed to do. He tried to call her. Blocked. He tried through intermediaries. Declined. Panic edged into his voice as he left messages for people who once needed him. Needs reverse quickly. By evening, a notice arrived. Eviction proceedings initiated for arrears. He laughed, then stopped. The laugh broke into something thin and frightening. She visited a clinic funded quietly through the foundation, holding the twins as nurses smiled. This was the money she recognized, applied, purposeful, durable. Headlines could wait. Power felt clean when directed outward. She left without speeches, without cameras, without names on walls. Peace followed her like a shadow. He sold a watch that night. Then another. He canceled subscriptions. He counted. He recalculated. He remembered the hospital bed and felt nauseous. Pride had delayed remorse. Now remorse arrived with invoices. He drafted a message promising change. He didn't send it. Desperation smelled dishonest even to him. By morning, rumors hardened into fact. Bankruptcy filings circulated. A former colleague avoided his gaze. Another offered sympathy that tasted like pity. He nodded ashamed. The city seemed smaller, doors heavier, faces sharper. He walked more. He thought less. She met with counsel briefly. Threats existed, they said. She nodded. Precaution stood. She would not be baited into spectacle. Let time work. Let outcomes teach. The twins laughed at bubbles and reached for light. She breathed. That afternoon, he stood before his childhood home, now listed under a holding company. A sign announced pending renovation. He recognized the address from a press brief he'd skimmed and ignored. The realization landed slow and exact. Memory had been purchased, not to wound, but to conclude. Night fell. He slept poorly, dreaming of signatures and lock screens. She slept lightly, listening for cries. Tomorrow promised audits and interviews. He promised himself humility. Promises weighed less than patterns. Money ran out. Meaning remained scarce. Regret sharpened into clarity too late. Across the distance, karma closed accounts carefully, line by line, without malice, without mercy, without appeal. He waited outside the building longer than he planned, rehearsing sentences he had practiced for months. The guard checked his name twice before letting him in. Inside, the air smelled of polish and restraint. He felt small, stripped of pretense. When the door opened, she stood there without surprise, as if she had expected this moment eventually. "I won't take much time," he said quickly. His voice cracked anyway. He spoke about mistakes, fear, ego. He admitted the truth he had buried. He left because he thought she was powerless. Saying it aloud tasted like ash. He asked for forgiveness without conditions, without requests, finally understanding how rare that was. She listened without interrupting, arms folded, eyes steady. When he finished, silence filled the room. "I forgive you," she said at last. The words stunned him. Relief surged, almost dizzying. Then she continued. "But forgiveness is not access." The relief drained. She explained boundaries calmly. Supervised visits would remain. No private contact. No public association. The twins' stability came first. He nodded, ashamed of how much he wanted more. "I understand," he said, meaning it. For the first time, he wasn't negotiating. He was asking. She saw the difference and acknowledged it with a slight nod. Growth, she knew, began after consequences, not before. They spoke briefly about schedules and rules. Practicalities replaced emotion. It hurt less than he expected. Structure was mercy. When he stood to leave, he hesitated. "Thank you," he said again. This time, gratitude carried no hope. That made it real. After he left, she sat alone and felt the weight of the decision settle. Forgiveness cost something too. It meant releasing anger she had sharpened for survival. She closed her eyes and breathed until the tension eased. Mercy was not weakness. It was closure chosen deliberately. That evening, she watched the twins play, their laughter stitching her resolve. She would not teach them bitterness. She would teach them boundaries. Love with lines drawn clearly. Safety over sentiment. Always. He walked home lighter and heavier at once. Lighter for being seen honestly. Heavier for knowing the past could not be edited. He passed a store window and caught his reflection, older, quieter, truer. Redemption would be slow, private, uncelebrated. That was fitting. Messages came in later, rumors of a reconciliation. He corrected none. He had learned restraint. The world would tell stories without him. He would live the work. Night settled. She reviewed a final document and set it aside. Tomorrow would bring interviews, audits, tests. Tonight, she rested, knowing she had chosen integrity over erasure. Some wounds closed without scars. Others healed into lessons. Forgiveness ended one war, but did not rewrite history. Between them, a new equilibrium formed, fragile, honest, bounded. The twins slept, unaware that mercy had been extended without surrender. He slept, aware that mercy was not a door, but a mirror. The future would judge consistency. Karma had taught enough. Now time would watch closely, patient, exacting, and fair. Years later, he watched the broadcast from a quiet apartment, volume low, curtains open. The twins stood beside her on stage, taller now, confident. Their names announced to applause they accepted without surprise. They spoke briefly, clearly, about service and responsibility. He felt pride rise and stop short, unfinished, unresolved, deservedly distant. They did not look toward the cameras for approval. They looked toward the future. The anchor mentioned their foundation's milestones, their scholarships, their impact. Her name followed, steady, respected, unembellished. No reference to scandal. No footnotes. History had edited itself by omission. He understood then that erasure was not punishment. It was consequence. He had become irrelevant to the story that mattered. He turned the television off and sat with the quiet. He had kept his promises. Years of consistency, supervised visits that slowly widened, birthdays attended at the edges, holidays marked by restraint. He was present without being central. It was the role he earned. Some nights, regret still burned. Most nights, acceptance cooled it. Across the city, she closed her office and joined the twins for dinner. They laughed about trivial things. She watched them and felt gratitude sharpen into peace. Wealth had brought trials she had met standing. Power had revealed allies and enemies alike. She had chosen legacy over spectacle, patience over vengeance. Karma had done the rest without instruction. Later, she found an old envelope in a drawer, the invitation from years ago, creased purposeful. She smiled faintly and returned it to the drawer. Some symbols deserved rest. The past had no claim on her present. He walked outside and breathed in the night air. The city no longer felt hostile. It felt honest. He had learned the cost of entitlement and the price of repair. He volunteered quietly. He worked steadily. He spoke less. When asked about success, he talked about showing up. When asked about love, he talked about timing. The twins grew into themselves, asking questions she answered truthfully, gently, without poison. They knew who he was. They knew what he wasn't. That clarity protected them more than secrecy ever could. Love, she taught them, included boundaries. On a different screen somewhere, a rerun played of an interview she once gave. "We don't outrun consequences," she said then. "We outgrow them." The word still held. He slept easier now, knowing some losses were permanent and deserved. She slept peacefully, knowing some endings were victories disguised as restraint. The twins slept dreaming of futures they would build. Morning would come. Challenges would follow. But the ledger felt balanced. Betrayal had sparked collapse. Regret had taught humility. Sudden wealth had revealed character. Karma had closed the circle quietly. The story ended not with reunion, but with alignment. Not with punishment, but with proportion. He lost access. She gained peace. The twins inherited clarity. Time nodded, satisfied. And somewhere between what was taken and what was learned, justice settled in. Not loud, not cruel, simply complete.